So, I recently found out that Mexico is soon gonna have a huge theme park built somewhere along the Riviera Maya, and it's gonna be Mesoamerican themed. According to the article, the announcement of said park comes at, quote, a time of tense relations between Mexico and the United States, and it's gonna have attractions that include a flight simulator, a mock submarine, and a pirate ride. Now I wonder where I've seen those before. And then our beautiful overlord outgoing President Peña Nieto, he will be missed, he said, quote, we're gonna compete with other theme parks in the United States. Geez, wonder what he could be referring to. Quote, and I'm sure ours will be better. Yeah, sure, considering the high quality of every Mexican theme park so far. I mean, look at this is disgusting. Can you imagine Space Mountain being seen from oh wait, that's actually possible. Well, point still stands, Mexican theme parks will never be as high quality as Disney parks. Or Universal parks, or Knott's Berry Farm, those are also pretty good. But right now we're focusing on Disney. And I don't think that any theme park that the Mexican government can build can be even remotely close to the quality offered by Disney theme parks. So I started wondering, what if a Disney theme park was actually built here in Mexico? What would it look like? Would it actually work? Would I like it? I mean, what would need to be changed for it to be distinctly Mexican yet authentically Disney? So I've listed some of the questions that we should ask ourselves if Bob Iger did announce something like this in the next D23, which is unlikely, but not impossible. First off, where would it be built? Well, there's been talks for a while about the current Mexico City airport being completely demolished as soon as a new one opens, and that's a lot of space in a very good part of the city. Yes, it's surrounded by some areas that would need some fixing, but it can work. Yeah, the problem here is that the airport is not shaped like a Disneyland park at all, so it wouldn't work. Yeah. Santa Fe and Interlomas are the nicest parts of the city, where the people that could actually afford a Disney park live. And there's a lot of space available there, so it's another option. The only problem here is that there's a lot of mountains in that area, so I can imagine that building a theme park in here would be a nightmare. The only reasonable option would be to build this brand new theme park in the outskirts of Mexico City. Maybe not even in Mexico City at all. You know how Disneyland Paris is not actually in Paris? Well, I'm thinking that maybe we could place our new Disney theme park in one of these many small towns in the state of Mexico that nobody knows, and still call it Disneyland Mexico City. Hey, if France got away with it, then so can we. These towns are normally really small and have a lot of unused real estate in between. And besides, a brand new theme park like this would really help them with tourism. I mean, heck, there's already some big theme parks located in small towns like these, such as Reino Animal. And yes, we literally have a theme park called Animal Kingdom here in Mexico. So yeah, the state of Mexico would be the best option for the location of Disneyland Mexico City. I mean, of course, if we wanted to build a Mexican Disney park, it could also be located close to any other big Mexican city like Guadalajara or Monterrey. It wouldn't necessarily have to be Mexico City. The only reason why I'm keeping it close is because I'd like to visit it at least once a month, alright? Can you really blame me for that? What language would be prominent in our park? So I went for the audio of some of the international attractions, and I found out that there's no rule of thumb when it comes to what language is spoken in them, really. In Japan, mostly everything is in Japanese, whilst in Hong Kong, mostly everything is in English.
Welcome to Mystic Manor.
I'd say that France has a perfect balance between French and English. But anyways, to answer this question, we'd have to know if Mexican Disneyland working title would be appealing to an international audience like Asian parks are, or if it'd be something that only Mexicans end up visiting. Being 100% honest, I think the only foreigners that would find it appealing would be people from other Latin American countries that are just too lazy to fly all the way to California or Florida to experience the real thing. Unless, of course, Mexican Disneyland is a completely different experience than the one that is offered in any other Disney park. If we made our park unique enough that it actually gets attention from places other than Latin America, then we could actually have some English. And I say some because even if we did get a wide international audience, most Mexicans all over the country hate English. So yeah, they'd be very angry if they ended up having all of our audio animatronics speak in English the way they do in Hong Kong. I think the best option is to have half of the audio in English and half of the audio in Spanish, the way that they do in France. So anyways, this leads to my following point. We established that a Mexican Disney park would have to be very unique and very different to any of the American parks in order to even stand a chance of getting any international audience to come. So what would it be themed after? Well, for it to be unique, it would need to be something that shouts Mexico, yet still feels Disney all the way through. First and foremost, the castle. The only way it would feel right would be for it to be Elena of Avalor's castle. Now, I know that she's not an official Disney princess, so it would be kind of hard for her to get her own castle in a theme park, so the only way for this to work would be for Walt Disney Animation Studios to make a movie about her. So get to it! So yeah, the castle would just need some slight modifications to resemble a more traditional Disney park castle, cause this one is a little too wide, but I'm pretty sure it's already good enough. So, we get a big Latin American culture inspired castle in the middle of the park. Then what? Well, the two biggest Disney franchises related to Mexico as of right now are Coco and the Three Caballeros. So let's start with Coco. And I'm thinking that we could maybe even have an entire Coco land in our park. Just picture an entire land dedicated to recreating the Land of the Dead from the movie. Now, it may sound kind of crazy, but it wouldn't be the first time that we get an entire land dedicated to a single Pixar movie. So picture this. You're standing in a hub of Disneyland Mexico, you have Elena's castle right in front of you, and to the right of the partner statue, there's a bridge leading you into Coco Land. What would this bridge look like? Well, obviously it would be a marigold bridge, like the ones in the movie. The entrance to the land would be the customs office that welcomes the dead to the Land of the Dead in the movie. And each of the individual offices could be little kiosks that sell pins or something. So you enter this land in which most of the feel of the movie is achieved via forced perspective, obviously, and there's Day of the Dead music playing in the background, both traditional Day of the Dead songs
Chumbalaka, chumbalaka, chumbala. Chumbalaka, chumbalaka, chumbala.
and pieces from the Coco soundtrack. Now, even though the Land of the Dead is always dark in the movie, I don't like the idea of an entire land being indoors. I know that they've already done an entire World Showcase pavilion indoors, but I feel like an entire land would just feel too claustrophobic and would be a complete nightmare to maintain. So this wouldn't be exposed to sunlight, yet of course the land would look its best at night, when it's all dark and it can actually look the way it does in the movie. So now for the layout and the rides at Coco Land. First off, I think the land could be divided into two basic sections. The area that you would walk into when entering the land, and in the back, the movie's Plaza de la Cruz. The first area would have the most rides, and the second one would be purposed for entertainment and dining. And what rides would there be in Coco Land? Easy. First and foremost, your traditional dark ride that tells the story of the movie with some decent audio animatronics and a cool ride vehicle. If Imagineers were feeling really lazy, then they could just have Omnimovers that are shaped like skulls, who knows. The facade for this ride would be the Family Customs Office. I freaking adore that building, it's beautiful, and so is the actual building in Mexico City that inspired it, so yeah. The name of the dark ride would be Miguel's Day of the Dead Adventure or something along those lines, I don't know. It's not like dark ride names are the most subtle thing ever. And then after a dark ride, we would need a thrill ride. A ride that can act as a weenie for the land. I'm thinking of a roller coaster that would basically be the tower on which Ernesto de la Cruz's mansion sits. You would get lifted to the top of the mountain, and you would get to the mansion where an audio animatronic Ernesto de la Cruz serenades you. And this wouldn't be a straight drop, it would be a twirly drop because of the way in which the tower is shaped. I guess that would add a lot more thrill to it and make it a bit more different and unique. Also, you'd probably end up throwing up a lot more, and then in the end you'd have an audio animatronic Hector singing the depressive rendition of Remember Me as you wait to exit the car, kinda like how Wheezy sings to you at the end of the Slinky roller coaster. Now, as to how the heck to create two audio animatronics that are literally skeletons and would potentially exhibit the wires, well, I don't know, Imagineers are magicians, they can probably come up with something. You then exit through Ernesto de la Cruz's mansion gift shop, because of course you do. Next to it, in the middle of the main area, you would have a carousel. Now, I normally find carousels boring, but what about an Alebrije carousel? I mean, who wouldn't like to ride on the back of an Alebrije? I think it's a good idea. And now for the second portion of the land, the Plaza de la Cruz. So just like in the movie, on the end of the plaza you'd have the stage from the talent show, on which there'd be daily stage shows and mariachis and whatnot. In front of the stage, you'd have the skeletal version of the Ernesto de la Cruz statue, and then there'd be a restaurant on one side of the plaza and two food stands on the other. The names of the food stands would be Chicharron's Chicharron and Hector's Chorizo, and they'd sell chicharron or chorizo, obviously.
He choked on some chorizo!
There'd also be some stores, of course, because Disney loves money. Frida Kahlo's workshop, for instance, would be home to a bunch of expensive art and jewelry. And then you'd need another shop for your cheap generic Coco and Disneyland Mexico merchandise. Alright, we're almost done with Coco Land. I feel like we'd only be missing one more attraction, an outdoors sea ticket attraction to be specific. I've kind of run out of ideas at this point, so I'll just leave it like that. Outdoor sea ticket attraction. There you go, that's your Coco Land. 4 brand new rides, 4 shops, a restaurant, and a stage for endless opportunities of live entertainment. I think this land alone would already make Disneyland Mexico worth visiting. But let's keep going. So at the beginning I said that the Three Caballeros is the other major Disney property related to Mexico. So what about an actual The Three Caballeros ride? You know, not just a bunch of random Mexican vignettes playing on a bunch of screens. I do understand that the Three Caballeros movie has no plot whatsoever, so it's not like the Imagineers were given a lot to work with. But now that we're gonna get an entire show dedicated to the Three Caballeros, maybe we could actually come up with a decent ride idea. Heck, if the new show does good, maybe we could have been built the ride around the show instead of the movie. Now, in my ideal version of a Three Caballeros ride, you'd get to ride a trajinera instead of whatever the heck this is supposed to be, and you'd have the Three Caballeros running around doing their crazy hijinks with the technology that is soon coming to Mickey's Runaway Railway, which looks really interesting. And if you still want to educate people about Mexico, you could maybe even have the ride vehicles fly over Mexico at a certain point, like some sort of an updated Space Station X1. The possibilities are pretty much endless. So, the Three Caballeros, the ride, working title, would be located in another original land that I have decided to name Colonial Plaza. Now, according to the Disneyland Paris rule for naming stuff, this name works because it uses the same words in both Spanish and English. So this Colonial Plaza would basically be the Mexican version of Liberty Square, and it would be located right behind the Avalor Castle, where Fantasyland normally is. In the middle of the land, there would be yet another The Three Caballeros ride, which would basically be the exact same thing as Magic Carpets of Aladdin, but with magic serapes instead of magic carpets. It would be called Magic Serape Flight, or something along those lines. And I can imagine that outside it, we can have statues of the Three Caballeros and all sorts of fun photo ops like that. And next to our Three Caballeros area, what about a distinctly Mexican version of the best ride of them all? The Haunted Mansion. So hear me out. Traditional Mexican ghost stories are really rich and unique, and very different to American ghost stories. So I feel like that would be a really fun ride to Mexicanize. So here's how our Haunted Mansion will look. Or rather, our Haunted Hacienda. Because about an 80% of all Mexican ghost stories take place in haciendas. Now, I feel like for anyone who's not Mexican, it's kinda hard to get a complete grasp of exactly what an hacienda is, so I'll just link a random video explaining haciendas in case any of you needs a quick crash course. So, as Walt would have wanted, we'll let the ghost take care of the inside and we'll take care of the outside. The facade would be this beautiful and grandiose hacienda that looks just like any hacienda would have looked back in the Porfirian era. Pristine and beautiful. Our story, however, will take place in a time of the Mexican Revolution, which is in itself one of the most disturbing and troubled times in Mexican history already. So the basic storyline is going to be about a bunch of revolutionaries that came into the hacienda and slaughtered all of its population, because that's what those guys used to do. They're not entirely heroes, you know. And now the hacienda is haunted by the restless spirits of all of its previous inhabitants. It kind of writes itself, really. So just like with Phantom Manor in Disneyland Paris, I'd like to go for a darker tone in here. Playing Grim Grinning Ghosts would make no sense whatsoever, so we'd need a new catchy theme song. I would like to hear a creepy version of a corrido revolucionario.
Si Adelita se fuera con otro, la seguiría por tierra y por mar. Si por mar en un buque de guerra, si por tierra en un tren militar.
Maybe a corrido revolucionario about the inevitability of death or the atrocities of the revolution or something. I know that Disney park songs aren't usually that nuanced. I'm not complaining, that's what makes them perfect. But it's a neat idea to have a corrido as the hacienda's theme song. We'd also need a whole new cast of ghosts to inhabit this place. I guess most of them could just be ghosts wearing sombreros, I don't know, you can go wild. You can even have the two most famous Mexican ghosts, La Llorona and El Charro Negro, show up at a certain point. Don't know how they would fit into this story, but imagine how fun those howdy animatronics would be. The queue of the ride would be full of Anakin plants, because in this story, the hacienda was an Anakin plantation, thus the HH logo, which can stand for both Haunted Hacienda and Hacienda Hechizada. The Stretchinger portraits would portray scenes related to the Mexican Revolution, such as Porfirio Diaz standing on a bunch of French gulls, or a bunch of revolutionaries standing in front of a half-built fine arts palace, or a bunch of farmers assaulting a line shop, or a Porfirian train about to get derailed, kinda similar to this one that they have in Disneyland Paris. And finally, the corridor that leads you to the boarding area would look something like this, with these kinds of colonial paintings acting as your changing portraits. I don't know. So yeah, those would be the basics of a haunted hacienda. Now, back to the Colonial Plaza, as I've said, the whole theming would be after a small colonial village, with the hacienda being the highlight of the land. I feel like this land could use another attraction though. What about our very own Hall of Presidents? Nah, maybe just great moments with Benito Juarez would be enough. Just add a few more details and there's our Colonial Plaza. And I think that's it for the original lands. I've tried to think of a Mexican counterpart to Frontierland, but it would just end up being Mexican Revolution Land, and as I said, the Mexican Revolution was anything but pretty and there's no way to romanticize it. And besides, us Mexicans do enjoy a good western, so yeah, we'd still have a Frontierland. But I'll explore Frontierland along with the missing parts of Disneyland Mexico in my following video. Now, this was originally intended to be a single video, but my family's PC went through a midlife crisis and decided to stop working for some reason. So what you've seen here today is what I was able to get back, along with this next clip that I'll leave here as a preview for the next part. I don't really care a lot about how that one looks. It can be the exact same thing that they have in Orlando, I guess. There's not really much that you can change about a Main Street USA. They're all practically the same around the world. So thanks a lot for watching the first half of my ideas for a Mexican Disney park, and stay tuned for part 2. Go follow me on Pinterest for some more pictures of the Mexican Revolution, and make sure to subscribe if you like this kind of content. I guess I'll upload part 2 as soon as our computer is back from the repair shop. And if its memory cannot be saved, then I'll just start working on it again, but I'll do it quickly. In the meanwhile, I guess I'll try to work on my iPad. I really want to make a Winnie the Pooh video in the spirit of the Christopher Robin movie that's coming up, which, by the way, looks really promising. So if the part 2 to this video is delayed, you guys will at least have a Winnie the Pooh video. So I guess that's it. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.